And we are live.
Yay!
Awesome. Hi, Laleh.
Hello.
So wonderful to be here. Yeah.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, truly.
Wow.
It's just so awesome. Yeah. It's just the conversations that make, just before this, when we were talking about, about business done different, about business, about life living business during the COVID, and the stuff that came up, around how different life has been before COVID, how much we took for granted, how much we thought we knew what we were creating, and we kind of had an idea as to where we were going. And then COVID actually pretty much pulled the rug under our feet, saying, now fly. And how many of us were like terrified, saying, I don't know how to fly. Don't pull the rug away from my feet, because that's what I know. That's what is comfortable. And it's amazing to see how many companies, how many organizations have actually grown during the COVID time, grown like not 3 times, 4 times, but almost 10 times. And then there've been so many that have also just vanished from the very face of the planet, and gone into bankruptcy, gone into litigation and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to watch the change that something like COVID has created around the planet, around the world. Bypassed all the separations of countries, bypassed all the separations of the how to do business, and it actually got literally, when you talk about being innovative with your business, being creative with your business, I think that's what it put everyone to test. How creative can you get?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think just to bring also the conversation you and I were having before this, because, business done different is part of the Joy of Business specialty, and it is a 3-day class. But that wasn't what we were talking about. We were really talking about how different each of us is, and the business of our lives done different. Some of you guys watching might know me, some of you might not. During COVID was really interesting, because before that I was traveling every week to a new country. Sometimes I was in a country for 2 weeks, but for most of it I was traveling. And I had gone to Portugal to look at a property, because I was going to make that be my European hub. And when all this was going down, I was like, maybe I'll stay here 2 extra days. I'm going to change hotels and go to my favorite place that has a million trees, and let me see what happens, and those 2 days in that other hotel turned into 9 months and turned into 1 year for me to be in Portugal, which looked very different than what my head imagined as 9 days, And, one thing we were talking about is, I'm a facilitator of many, many specialties. I have my own specialties as well. I do a lot of things in business. And how I personally found myself at moments, not at the beginning of COVID, because even though we weren't allowed to go anywhere, I was surrounded by nature. And so for me, I found, of course, we had Zoom, right? We did everything on Zoom.
Amazing Zoom.
Amazing. My goodness.
Amazing Zoom is. Oh,
yeah.
Magical.
And we were using it years before the rest of the world was.
Yeah, absolutely. Truly.
But I realized that going every day for a walk in the woods, really, like, the earth was showing me something else, showing me something else was possible. And I ended up adopting 3 dogs, because of course one does that, visiting a new country and living in a hotel.
Totally.
And
it's just something that's just so normal.
no, that is normal in my crazy world. Okay, that is so normal in my crazy world that dogs are pulling me, and I'm going, yes, I
Yeah.
will rescue you. You know. But one thing that I realized when I went to this new home was my surrounding changed. I was no longer surrounded by all the trees. I was now surrounded by buildings, people, insane people around me. And, you know, I think a lot of times we underestimate our awareness and what we are tapping into. You know, Chandana, you and I are both talk to the entities facilitators, and we have all these great tools. And one of the things that I didn't realize until I would say, gosh, maybe a year and a half later, was that the house was located on some portals.
Wow.
And so I was tapping into a lot of that, but it wasn't nature portals. So, you know, one of the things for me during that time, though, was I have these great things. I'm a constant creator. I have people all around the world. I couldn't see a lot of people because of the rules and regulations of kind of what was happening. But one thing I realized is my awareness skyrocketed to such a degree that I didn't even know what to do with myself. You know, I have tools, I use them all night. I would play audios all morning, but there were mornings that it did take me hours to get out of bed to be me, you know? And I think that's one of the things we sometimes take for granted, that we have tools. We have incredible people we can reach out to who can facilitate us, and they did, but also what your power is, you know, like from these crazy moments in my life, I've gotten so much more awareness. I've become so much more present with my capacities, not just with energies, with, you know, beings and stuff, like in terms of entities that I already had and it enhanced even greater, but how much we actually are aware so much beyond our land, our earth, our planets, you know. And when that moment we want to go into wrongness, that's when we kill it.
Yeah.
And there
And
are
when,
moments, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And also when we think we have to do something with awareness instead of just be present with it and ask questions around it, you know, it's almost like if you're aware of something, it doesn't have to be about you. It doesn't have to be about the country that you live in. It could be that you're just simply aware of something that's going to happen in in a totally different country. With somebody you don't even know. And you know, it's like we've been trained to believe that what we are aware of is ours, and what we are aware of, we have to do something with it. But you know, it's always asking that question that actually is that little line that keeps you from going crazy with your awareness and actually being present with your awareness. And I recognize every time I don't go into question, which used to be so easy for me, because you know, being aware of what's happening around, listening to people's heads instead of hearing what they're saying, it can be contradictory in your world, right? Because they're saying something, but you're hearing something that's so different. And you're like, is something wrong with me? Or, you know, why am I thinking this about this person? I must be so evil and so terrible. Instead of just acknowledging that, oh, okay, this is what, you know, this is what I'm aware of and what is true here. The thing, what generally used to confuse me and put me into that contradictory situation is where I had to choose between what was right. Instead of being an allowance of what they're saying and being an allowance of my awareness, where neither is right and neither is wrong, it just is.
Yeah, truly, truly. And the same thing with businesses, you know, as we're having this conversation, I think, you know, like you said, when someone is talking, truly having allowance, allowing them for their thoughts, their actions. And allowance is one of those things every day I'm asking for more of, you know, because There's days that are easier than other days.
Of course, yeah.
But
And it's a constant forward movement, right?
it really
Yeah,
is. But it's
yeah,
become so much more ease, the world of knowing people have choice,
yeah.
and businesses have choice. And so for me also, I realized, I had given myself this job to make sure everyone was successful, making sure everyone was happy, and that's the thing also with business, is also knowing you have to be an allowance if a person or that business is ready to go.
Yeah, that totally. Yeah, because it's not your responsibility. You can't choose for them. You can just show them that they have choice. And you
Yeah.
can give them the tools so that you can share with them certain tools that makes their choice easier
Yeah.
than
Well,
before.
I get that it's also from when we're looking from within, like even your own business. At the 7-day, we talked about animation.
Yeah,
Animation, you take something, whether it's dying or ill or, whatever it's going on, it's just not motivated or whatever, and you inject your energy to bring it alive, to allow it to succeed. But you cannot change what someone's choice is. And I found also, with business, a lot of times, I have a management consulting company, and a lot of times people would come to me where their business was like close to bankruptcy, or just some really difficult moments. And they came because they wanted to know how they can close their business to have the most ease with it. But even before access, I would ask them questions, and you'd
yeah.
realize it just was that they'd given up on the business. And then some, they weren't listening when the business was saying, I'm finished.
It's almost like they put them on drip and another and again a drip, and then takes a couple of steps forward and again dies. And then again you put it on drip and again a couple of steps and it again dies. And the energy that's going into that is so exhausting. Instead of just allowing it to die, knowing and acknowledging that it's probably changing and mutating into something different.
Yeah. And what if it was dying yesterday, but today it chooses to live? And by you having yesterday's reference point to what the business was, you're not allowing the change of that mutation that you're talking about to actually exist.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. When I'm so enjoying this conversation with you, Laleh. It's interesting to look at um, how, not the how part from how you go about doing things, but looking at from the how of what is truly possible when you start to look at a business that could be quote unquote dying, and people's reactions to that, or the person who owns the business, his reaction to a business that's dying, how he reacts to it is often a space of frantic, a space of wrongness, a space of fear, and all the conclusions that, oh my God, there's no way that I can actually save this, and if this happens and that's going to happen. And they've already gone post the destruction of the business, and they've already decided and concluded that they're going to be destroyed. So what the business actually hears, as we were talking about earlier, when a business is an element of consciousness, if you're creating it from that space, and when you're creating it as that, the business is also hearing your communication through energy. So your business is going to just play out what you are supplying it. Are you being the energy of question with the business, or what does it require and what is required here? And being an allowance if it's choosing to die, or being an allowance if it's wanting to just rest and run again, trusting that there could be cycles. Trusting the cycle in business, trusting the cycle with your money flows, just trusting all of that, and knowing that, okay, what is required of my business today. But it's the space of that conclusion of, now this is going to end and then that's going to happen. And the how comes in, where the person goes frantic and creates this conclusionary reality of where he has to, we've been talking so much avoiding and defending, where you actually start to defend your conclusionary reality by avoiding a different possibility, even if it's staring you in the face. It's like looking at you right there, but you're like, no, I got to avoid you because I got to defend my point of view of destruction.
Yeah, and it's interesting, just the way you described it with the business. It's the same thing with our bodies.
Yeah.
Our bodies have no points of view. Businesses have no points of view either. And so when all the thoughts, feelings, emotions, anything you're saying out loud or energetically is what your body creates.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, like you said, with the business. And the thing for me, I've always loved business, and I'm realizing more and more, like even when I was 7, I would give my dad, recommendations on what to do and how to grow his business. Like business for me, in this body form, has always been really intriguing. And what I find more and more is like, it's the engagement of it that was always intriguing for me, like when you actually engage and you are having, it could be a verbal conversation, it could be an energetic conversation, which they both are. But like really allowing you to actually receive what it is that business is asking for. And then destroy and create, like you said, the conclusionary realities and all the projected futures that you have already played out to what the business is going to be and not be. And most of us don't realize some of these choices and decisions we made a long time ago. It's not cognitive that you're choosing it today. Maybe you are, but it's that reason that we say destroy and create everything you've defined your business to be and not to be every single day. So you are starting this new adventure with your business every day.
Absolutely. I love what Gary talks about business as. I read a quote once, him saying that for a humanoid, business is a playground of possibilities. And, when you look at it that way, it's just play. It's just play, it's just creation. And money is the byproduct of all of that creation. But somewhere business and money kind of got lumped together. And I think that's what started to create this playful energy, started to change the playful energy into something serious, because money is supposed to be serious in this reality. If money is included in the computation in this world with people dealing with, it's no longer fun.
Yeah.
So that's probably, yeah.
Which is so funny, because for me, money is so much fun. It's this play, it's part of that playground of possibilities.
Yeah.
But
totally.
I do get though, like you said, because a lot of times we also look at, where there's consciousness involved, where there's, we should be doing this or not doing that. We shouldn't be charging money and whatever. Like, I think there's this whole world of glumping as well.
Yeah.
And when you really look at it, does your business actually thrive? Does it get excited, have that enthusiasm when it also receives money? And the other day, someone put in one of the chats for the staff, they wrote, I had aligned with, it's not about the money. So I was defending, it's not about the money, and I was avoiding receiving the money.
Yes. Absolutely.
So everything that is, everything you all aligned and agreed, resisted and reacted, bought and sold, we destroyed and create all that.
Yeah.
Right, wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all night, shorts, boys, co-eds, and beyond. And it's so funny because I even recall a moment a few years back. I can't recall what it was, but I remember even saying, oh, it's not about the money, but it wasn't I know I was doing it to align. I wasn't being me at that moment, you know, but I realized how much that was so incongruent, because for me, if we're really being oneness, if we're really being the conscious beings we be, money is part of that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
included.
absolutely, that's inclusion. You know, but when we go into separating from money by justifying that we're doing this for the fun and just doing this because we want to or we enjoy it, and you're not doing it for the money, there's such a level of explanation and justification that comes from the point of view that money is wrong.
Yeah.
You know, that in itself is coming from a space of separation from money instead of inclusion of money, just the way you would include everything else, just the way you would include your body, just the way you would include engaging with people, just the way you would include creation. You know, it's just from the point of view of a very subtle and probably a very emotional point of view around money being bad and evil.
And I'm sure none of us ever
None of
aligned
us
and
have
agreed to that.
ever done that. No, never. Everything got brought up, can we destroy and uncreate that? Right,
Yes.
wrong, good, bad, hot, pot, 9 shots, boys, forwards and beyonds. Yeah, you know, and you were talking earlier about the body and business, and it's really interesting. For me personally, I look at, um, you know, body is such a tool of consciousness, but we've actually landed up using it, you know, making it, twisting it into becoming a tool of judgment. And instead of allowing our body to actually show us, direct us, be the compass of, you know, what is possible, what else is possible, and okay, body, show me the way, instead of being that with the body, we go into using our body to stop us and control us. And I mean, I know I did that for a really long time with my body. I created a lot of issues with my body, and I did that a lot. So I recognize how much of it's such an easy way of doing it because your body has no point of view. So if you're creating pain in your body's like, okay. If you're creating movement with your body is okay. So, you know, it's just so easy. And it just comes from the point of view, and it's like, you really have to be present with, okay, what am I choosing now with the body? What am I asking my body to facilitate me into greatness? Am I willing to receive the facilitation of my body into greatness? Or am I going to use this to stop me? The body is this beautiful gift, you know, whether it's business, whether it's relationships, whether it's with the entity world or whatever, your body is constantly giving you information.
Truly.
Are you willing to hear it? Are you willing to listen to it? Or are you just judging it and identifying every intensity as pain or every intensity as a problem?
You know, it's interesting. I was on this interview yesterday, actually 2 of them, and both of them was that, you know, how much we associate pain or a problem. Well, we say pain or problem instead of the possibility in disguise. It's a capacity, it's an ability, it's a talent, it's a gift that's disguised, you know. And if we are willing to flip it, it's amazing what can happen. And you know, like you and I talked before we got started on this, you know, even the moments where I would have said to you, it seemed like difficulty, it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
totally.
and
Absolutely.
it's like, you know, and so I knew it was capacity, abilities, but it's also knowing it's okay. We don't have to be perfect to where nothing affects us, you know. And when we are willing to be vulnerable and ask for help, you know. I yesterday I ended up being on 2 things because someone's body wasn't doing very well. They asked for contribution 2 days ago, and then they messaged me and said, hey, I was asking my radio show who would be a contribution talking about bodies, and you popped. You know, would you be willing to be on my show even though I physically can't be there? And I was like, yeah, happy to be there. But one thing I realized is, like, you know, with all of this, like, she wasn't before willing to ask for help.
Yeah.
And when she did, she messaged me afterwards. She's like, I am so grateful for the pain. It got me to actually reach out, bring you on, and what you discussed on my show helped me create space with my body. Like the conversation maybe wouldn't have been me, maybe it would have been someone else, but like it's so amazing that moment when we are willing to be vulnerable and ask for contribution. Like what really we can receive from that.
And your willingness to, to just ask for a contribution also comes from the space of being in allowance of what you're choosing in that moment. Because if you're in judgment of what you're choosing in that moment, you really can't reach out. You really can't be vulnerable, and you can't acknowledge. You can't acknowledge it as a choice. You look at it and be like, yeah.
But you're also in the space of this reality instead of beyond this reality.
Yeah.
So the magic, the miracles of you and the miracles of the universe, they can't even contribute because you're not at the space of receiving from that frequency.
Yeah, totally. And Laleh, I've noticed there are times when, just letting someone suffer in that moment. If somebody has a pain, or I really like to look at it as every intensity that you receive is a gift, and every intensity that you reject is pain. But when you look at it and be like, okay, I'm choosing intensity in these 10 seconds, then I'm going to turn it up and make it so intense that I think I'm going to die with it. But just being an allowance of that and being like, this is what I want right now, not from a space of rightness or wrongness, but just allowance of, okay, I'm choosing intensity. I'm choosing to sleep in, I'm choosing to rest, I'm choosing to reach out, or maybe not even reach out. Body, what is it that you are asking for?
Yeah. I mean, even this morning before you and I got on, I was great. I mean, I'm happy, woke up so happy. I'm so grateful to be in America right now. And then there's a moment of like my left kidneys, there was this like intensity to it. And it's funny because 99% of the time I have no pain in my body. Like my body and I are so happy. And I was like, okay, so what is this information, and is it about me? Is it my body? Is it just awareness? Is it a capacity? Like I was just asking questions, and it was so interesting. One, it didn't belong to me. But returning it was interesting because I kept perceiving it. And then I realized, oh, I have a commitment to healing this person. And in the last few days, I took those commitments away.
Wow, amazing. Yeah.
Where before it was an autopilot heal them.
Yeah.
Now I was aware that they're seeking that again. And now was the choice, what am I choosing consciously? And so, when I ended up clearing that, and then like thanking my body, because I was like, thank you so much for this information awareness. Like it changed everything.
Yeah.
Changed everything. So, sometimes I think even like with who does this belong to, like we stop there instead of what else is our body gifting us? What else is our business gifting us of the future?
Yeah.
The future is always, I know I'm a futurist, like I'm so aware of the future. And it is, our businesses are gifting us information of that. So where is it also asking you to change things up? Become aware of really where the world's going for these 10 seconds, because that's as far as we can really.
Absolutely. And creating for the future doesn't always show up the way you think it would, or in that moment, to even be with that, to even be present with the creation, knowing that there is, because as a, when you are so aware, you're really not separating the present and the past and the future. It just comes to you, and it's but if you make it, for me, it's really worked this way. If I make it really about just the future and not the moment, there's a huge separation that comes into my world. But if I'm just so aware of the creation or whatever I am being in this moment, as the future, there's so much ease. It's just expansive. And you start to receive the contribution of the future in the moment. And it's just a different way of creating, right? It's just allowing yourself to receive from every molecule in the universe, because the universe doesn't separate, the universe doesn't exclude. We decide we can receive from whom, and we decide who we can't receive from. But what if we actually allowed ourselves to receive from the future, from the past, and from the moment?
Yeah.
What if everything is just a beautiful gift?
Truly, I'm trying. Dane's been doing these 30 days of ESP sessions, and they've been incredible. And I remember he actually talked about that, because if we're not present in the now, we can't even receive.
Yeah.
You can't. So, like, even what you just said was so beautifully said, and how we can utilize the energy, the contribution, the gifts of the futures that may have been asked for a long time ago, that are being actualized, to also come into the now.
Yes.
Pull it in. So anywhere you're still waiting for it for the future, what if you instead engaged with it and then pulled it into the now and allowed you to receive it now?
Awesome. Thank you for that. That is lovely.
Thank you. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah. It really has, Laleh. Yeah. It's wonderful to, I wonder what else we can create. I wonder what else is possible on the planet that we haven't yet acknowledged, that we haven't yet allowed ourselves to receive. And what if we could just simply allow it to show up as if by magic?
Really, truly. And what if it looks nothing like what you have today? I created a business called Global Wellness for All in 2016. And from day one, it really had the desire of being a physical space, a large space. And at the time, I had just started traveling all the time. I was traveling all the time. And I was like, no, not yet. I'm not ready yet to be able to commit to something like that. I said, can we do it later? And during COVID, that's actually what happened, is then I had the space to actually play with things and ask questions, and literally I'm doing a project with the earth. And I talked to Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, and he's like, hey, watch Avatar. And I watched Avatar, and then I was like, what would it take for my Earth project to be at the jungle of Avatar? And do you know, less than 48 hours later, I met the guy who actually brought that jungle to life.
Wow,
and
that's
he
amazing.
invited me to do it there, which COVID, we ended up postponing it for a little while, but I'm like, what are we not asking for? And then the center wanted to be, and now I'm building a wellness center in Dubai, in a wellness building that is like such a futurist type of building that doesn't exist today. But Dubai wouldn't have been my first choice, you know what I mean? But like, I'm saying, like, truly, what if it's not about, a lot of times we say we're willing to explore something we've never considered before, but yet we limit what that can be.
Yeah. There's so many conclusions as to where you can set your business up based on, where you come from, where you live, where your home is, that, you don't even allow yourself to receive. Like for you to build a wellness center in Dubai is really out of the box.
Yeah.
Right? It's not something that, if you're living between Portugal and America, building a center in Dubai is like, not something everyone would choose. Yet, what is that creating in your world, in Dubai, on the planet, and as the future for everyone to receive?
Yeah. And, what if when we actually say, the universe and consciousness have our back, what if it actually is so different than what we imagine that is?
Yeah.
And what if your business has your back? What if your businesses have your back? Your body has your back? It's usually us that don't have our back. But if you realize, like you said, every molecule in the universe is here to contribute to you.
Would you receive?
We just have to be willing to receive it.
Just that. Yeah. It's just the willingness to receive it. If we allow ourselves to give up our points of views of how, where, when, why, and we just allow ourselves to follow the energy, there's total receiving in that, because now you're co-creating with the universe. And the universe doesn't have points of views about where you're going to create a wellness center. The universe is like, okay, this is your ask, this is the energy you be. Okay, let's go here. Yeah. And that's your willingness to have the contribution and to create with the universe. Yeah.
And the willingness to ask a question. That again, like if I wouldn't have asked, what would it take to have this, I wanted to do this summit, Earth Summit, in the jungles of Avatar. Like, who would ask that kind of question? It's just not something we think about every day. But what's the most ridiculous question that is true for you that you could be asking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't wait to visit your wellness center. And
well, we have a whole floor dedicated to the center, and we have a whole floor dedicated to a conference space. So I look forward to inviting you and many others to come and enjoy and play.
That's so exciting. So by when would this be ready, Laleh?
It's still in construction. Actually, I got to go in a few minutes because my next meeting is to get a status of what floor has been constructed so far, and my next meeting there. But they're targeting August 2023 for the building to be finished. And construction, we never know. So I'm targeting, we'll do actual like events and stuff towards the fall of 2023.
Awesome. Can't wait for that.
Me too.
All the contribution you require and your beautiful center requires, everything it requires, honey. What will it take for this to be absolutely the contribution you are asking it to be, and more, beyond this reality?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, honey. So grateful for you. And thank you for everyone who was watching with us or watching it later.
Who would catch our Facebook Live later, even into the future. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, honey.
Thanks, Laleh.
Bye-bye. Ciao.